I don't normally like to open segments with opinion pieces, but this story here from the Courier Journal may be one of the most interesting op-eds I've seen in a long time. Now, of course, there's a bit of confirmation bias here. It's a moderate Democrat saying that they may actually switch to Trump because of the far left push. The story's titled, "No One Votes to Be Despised. Democrats' Message May Swing My Ballot to Trump." Interestingly, the actual URL shows the title may have been different. Democrats' racism message may swing my vote, which got me thinking about why someone would or wouldn't vote for Trump if they were a Democrat. As it turns out, this person's fairly never Trumper as far as Democrats go, and actually criticizes Trump for not condemning those who were in Charlottesville incorrectly. And that's what I found most interesting about it. This person actually believes some of the worst things about Trump and still says they would rather vote for Trump because of these policies. I kid you not. It sounds like somebody who thinks all of the worst things about Trump, racist, whatever, still thinks policy is more important. So here's what I want to do. I want to read a little bit of this op-ed, and then I want to go through what's currently going on with the Democrats, because it seems, according to other stories, opinion, analysis, and news, as well as polls, the Democrats know they have no strong candidate, and they're actually extremely worried they will lose to Trump. I mean, case in point, Joe Biden. He gets criticized by his own wife, and Barack Obama won't endorse his former VP. All of this spells bad news, and I've got way more than just that. Let's start with this story, though. Before we do, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There's a PayPal option, a crypto option, and a physical address. But of course, I always say this, the best thing you can do is just share this video. I mean, you can subscribe, like, comment below, but my channel, as well as many others, get deranked. So that means we still appear, but we're facing major competition from corporate channels like CNN who are being propped up, being given an artificial advantage. So if you do like this, just share it, or you don't have to. Let's read. This is from Michael Smith, an opinion contributor. He says, "I am not a Trump supporter, but if the alternative to him in next year's election is open borders and the Green New Deal, I may become a Trump voter. It's a distinction without an electoral difference, but hear me out. The president has earned a lot of the racial heat that comes his way. His reluctance to condemn the white nationalists in Charlottesville in 2017 was inexcusable. He questioned Barack Obama's citizenship even after the man produced a birth certificate. His feuds with kneeling NFL players and other black celebrities serve no purpose except to stir the pot. The full list is long and ugly. It would speak for itself if Trump's opponents would let it." I'm going to stop right now. This man believes all of the worst things imaginable about Trump. Now, some of these things are warranted. However, I want to stress, here is a quote from Donald Trump following Charlottesville. Quote, "I am not talking about the neo-Nazis and white nationalists because they should be condemned totally," in the same conference where he said very fine people. Now, you can criticize him all day for whatever he was saying. The point is, he said he condemned them totally. If you want to interpret a different way, you're allowed to, but I'm just going to give you the quote. So this guy clearly maybe doesn't believe it was legit or doesn't know it exists. And that's why I found this truly interesting. Here's someone who really believes the worst thing about Trump possible, that he refuses to condemn these people, and he's still saying he's going to vote for the guy? Wow. Policy must be extremely important to people. I'm being somewhat facetious. Like, of course it is. Let's read a little bit more. He says they haven't. Instead, they've trafficked in hysteria and hyperbole, particularly in their response to El Paso, Texas. Democrats fell over themselves to implicate the president's rhetoric and policies. Rep. Ocasio-Cortez pronounced Trump directly responsible. Imagine having never met the man in the El Paso perpetrator. The freshman congresswoman looked into his heart and determined that he wouldn't have killed if not for Trump. Is it any wonder the president's defenders reacted? Not that they had to look far from material. 13 hours after the Texas event, a self-described anti-borders leftist and Elizabeth Warren supporter killed 9 people in Dayton, Ohio. You can guess how many Democrats acknowledged parallels between their own rhetoric, some of which was echoed by the Dayton shooter, and the rhetoric they blamed for El Paso. Its current trajectory gives the Democratic Party 2 problems in 2020. First, the agenda. A spending spree like no country has ever attempted, supposedly financed by a handful of wealthy taxpayers. What could go wrong? Second, the message to voters. For decades, progressives have denounced America as hopelessly retrograde and racist. Naturally, they're talking about everyone except themselves. The insult them until they join our side strategy has gained devotees since the mass events. While no fewer than 5 presidential candidates have called Trump a white supremacist, their fellow progressives are shedding their reluctance to say the same of his supporters. Now, I don't want to read through literally everything, but he says that, basically, if that's all they have, he's actually going to vote for Trump. That's the point of the op-ed. I don't want to just read the whole thing to you, but I want to look at a few things. And as I did point out, Trump condemned, so we'll make sure that's clear. Take a look at this. This is a poll that was published on 7/31 by The Hill. Nearly half of independents say Democratic Party leans too far left. I've highlighted this several times, but it's extremely relevant here, so forgive me if you've seen it already, but it is important for the context. 48% of independent voters believe the Democratic Party is swinging too far left, while only 33% think the Republican Party is leaning too far to the right. Case in point, that op-ed, a man saying he'd rather vote for Trump if they're going to the far left. Now take a look at this. This story is remarkable. Soft levels of support mark this year's Democratic primary. They say, pollsters say one of the most striking characteristics of this cycle's Democratic presidential primary is the relatively soft support for top-tier candidates, even after an intense focus on the race by the national media. This almost certainly reflects the party's desperation to find a candidate who can defeat Donald Trump after its faithful were shocked by Democrat Hillary Clinton's loss in 2016, said pollsters and other experts interviewed by The Hill. Quote, "The fear of putting up the wrong person is palpable," said Jeremy Rosner, a veteran Democratic pollster. "It comes up in every focus group and every conversation I have with Democrats. It's top of mind and intense, and it's behind a lot of the fluidity in the race. Voters, or at least a large number of them, have yet to fall in love with a single candidate. They are instead shuffling through the candidates, comparing their possible strengths and weaknesses against Trump, and refusing to be pinned down to a single person. You're not seeing the groundswell behind any one candidate," said Democratic pollster Chris Kofinis. "There's a segment that thinks a centrist or a moderate is best to beat Trump. Hey, I'm one of them. Others think you need someone from the left to rally the base. A third segment has no idea." Now, they go on to talk about Joe Biden and how many people believe he is the best to win. I believe that's actually the case. We'll get to the stats, though, because check this out. In another poll that was published around the same time, 30% of Democrats in new polls say few or none of 2020 hopefuls share their values. To me, that is mind-blowing. A third of Democrats do not see their values represented on the debate stage. Mind-blowing. Who do they vote for? Why? Is it because they're far left, or is it because they're moderate? I'd have to imagine moderate, because those debates were pushed far left, saying they're going to give non-citizens health care and open borders. That's why Michael Smith criticized the Democrats, or that was the criticism. If it's open borders and a Green New Deal, he says he might vote for Trump. Now take a look at this. Who do you think it was mostly experiencing a disconnect from the Democratic Party? Moderate voters, because the other polls show the same thing. The Democratic Party is too far left. And then, so what is this? They say 18% say the GOP is, so Republicans believe are too far left. So this is what's huge to me, that Democratic voters, a third of them are fractured. Let's read a little bit of this. They say, a new poll found that 30% of Democratic and Democratic-leaning independent voters, right here, say that few or none of the 2020 presidential hopefuls share their values. In a Hill-Harris X poll released Tuesday, 4% of Democratic voters said that none of the more than 24 contenders running for the party's 2020 nomination share their values. 6% of them said that all of the candidates share their values. The poll found that there was a small difference in men and women voters. We can skip over that one. They said 70% of the voting bloc said that almost or some of the 2020 Democratic contenders do share their positions. Younger voters were more likely to say that 2020 Democrats have the same values as they do, with 75% of those surveyed between the ages of 18 and 34 saying that at least some of the 2020 Democrats share the same views as them. Now, we'll say this. We get it. I would be in that 75%. I'm 33, and I do believe there are a few that share at least some of my values. I think Tulsi Gabbard shares a decent amount, more than most, and the ones that are important. But Elizabeth Warren calling out big tech, that's a sharing of my value. So who was it that saw what they had to say and didn't feel anything for any of these candidates, regardless of what I think? Maybe it's not moderates. Maybe it is the far left. Maybe it's all communist. I have no idea. The point is, that's the Democratic base. That's 30% of Democrats who do not see their candidate up there. Well, if they don't get that support, they're not going to beat Trump. Now let's move on and talk about where we're currently going. For one, I want to highlight this. Democrats back off once fervent embrace of Medicare for all. The reason I highlight this, and we'll jump to the polls next, but I want to show that, is because, for one, Joe Biden is leading. And Joe Biden is the centrist, moderate type who's actually recently said Republicans are good people. He wants to show he can work across the aisle. The fact that they're abandoning Medicare for all or they're moving from it shows there really is soft support. They really don't know who's going to win. And it could be anybody at this point. Now they think it's Joe Biden, but guess what? Joe Biden's got a gaffe problem. Check this out. We can see that Biden, according to the Real Clear Politics average, is around 29%. And we can see Elizabeth Warren, second place, 15.8. He's got almost double what she has in the polls. It's possible that Biden collapses for a lot of reasons, but for the time being, the party is focused on him, and here's the danger of where the Democrats are at. The divide between the far left and the moderate Democrats will destroy them in the future. Think about it. If they endorse Biden's policies, if they say no Medicare for all, we got to be centrist, and then Biden loses, the only option they're going to have after that is to switch to somebody who's more far left. I mean, the next two people, Warren and Sanders. If the party message is centrist policy, and then Biden drops out or loses or loses favor with the electorate, then Bernie pops up. The DNC's got to turn around and say, oh, wait, we changed our mind again. You're going to sour voters because the message will keep changing. But here's where it gets really bad for Biden. Check this out. Biden allies float scaling back events to limit gaffes. Biden has had so many gaffes. And, I mean this with all due respect for the man who is, I believe, 77, or he's up there. I'm not surprised. He's an old dude. We all get old. I do not fault him in any way for this, but I will recognize that at a certain point, those who have carried the torch for decades need to pass it on. That's just how life is. And I'm not saying Biden shouldn't run or anything like that, but at a certain point, perhaps you have to. I don't know who else there is. I might vote for Biden. I seriously might. I don't know, though. I don't know. Because in the end, I'll probably only end up voting for someone like Tulsi. But I say might if Biden clarifies a lot of moderate policies. And the one thing that really drives me towards considering him is a return to normalcy for the Democratic Party. To basically say to the growing far left, this is not what we need right now. It will send a powerful message. But I admit, I kind of probably won't. Let's be real. But I entertain the idea. And we'll see what happens. I say this because I don't want to pretend like I wouldn't consider it. I don't want to pretend like I'm going to definitely do it. There's a conversation to be had. And there's time to develop. But I think a Biden win would send a message to the far left that no, you are not the future of this party. You are embracing ridiculous ideologies, non-theistic religions, and pushing policy that is not popular. But hey, I could be wrong. Biden's an old guy. The younger people in the race are more far left. So perhaps if the torch is handed down, the Democrats go far left. At least that's the trend we're seeing. Now, look, Biden's had a ton of gaffes. And I guess they're saying they should, they want to reduce. I heard something like it's about they don't want him having later in the day events. They need to have him, in the morning and then have him rest at night or something like that. Or that's what people are saying. I could be wrong about that. But check this out. I started researching this segment with this piece, actually. Reid. Of course, Medicare for all and decriminalizing border crossings are bad ideas. There are so many more important things to do, the former Senate Majority Leader said. Former Democrat saying these are bad ideas. And so the reason, I saw this and I said, wow, I wonder if there are other Democrats who, former powerful positions saying things like, we can't do this. And it seems like this is Vice News. Vice is not a fan of the moderates or the right. They're kind of far left. And here they are showing a more moderate stance. We can't have these. Let's go back to that first opinion piece. A guy who thinks Trump is the worst thing possible, who doesn't know Trump denounced the people in Charlottesville. He thinks he really just let it go. man, listen, the reason I highlight this to a great degree, if there is someone who thinks Trump is literally like the worst possible thing he could be, but the policy is more important, think about all the other people who feel similarly, who would rather believe that they have a racist president with good policy than vote for someone they think isn't racist with bad policy. Now, look, I'm not playing the game of he is or isn't. I'm saying they perceive it that way. They see Trump and they believe this about him, and they'd still rather vote for the guy. That shows me the Democrats have royally screwed something up. But I do have a few other stories we can go through, because this one really, really struck me. Do Democrats need a backup plan from rollcall.com? If Biden's stumbles continue, a certain former first lady might be well positioned to step in. You know, I really do think Michelle Obama could win. I do. And it's not because of policy or anything like that. I mean, people, for what it's worth, the Obama years, people felt good about it, at least on the left. So I'm not talking about conservatives. But look, people who voted for Trump also voted for Obama. I think Michelle Obama could win back the center. Here's the problem. She's definitely a better candidate than all of the Democrats combined, probably. Michelle Obama, let's be real. She's charismatic. She's got a well-crafted image of professionality, and it's the former first lady. Very, very popular. One of the most popular Democratic presidents. I think he is the most popular former Democratic president. I mean, we're coming off his presidency, but you're going to see it. Look, she's just stronger than they are, and that's that simple. She's strong. She's tall. And she's got the weight of Obama, right? She's got that she is an Obama. Joe Biden is old and gaffing. Here's the thing, though. I believe Michelle Obama could rally some former Obama voters who voted for Trump back to the Democratic side. I don't think the progressives will get behind a moderate. That's the problem. Moderates have expressed this fear. I've spoken to people, and I was recently speaking to a couple of people who were fairly moderate, and they said, if we don't pick someone like Bernie, the progressives will not back our candidate and will lose. And I said, well, then you're getting a candidate you don't want. So who's worse, Trump or Bernie? And they're like, Trump, at least in this conversation, they felt Trump was bad because of his character and Bernie is bad because of his policy. And they're like, well, I guess we'd rather have Bernie. And I'm like, well, there you go. You have no choice because the progressives are strong-arming you. And then one of the people I was talking to, they said, I'm out. I don't think I'll vote, so there it is. And I really mean this. Like, you look at that op-ed and I thought it was striking. Take a look at this. This is why I think even Michelle Obama would not necessarily win. I showed this the other day. While the majority absolutely still is either moderate or conservative on the Democrat side, the progressives are growing. By the time we get to 2020, the progressive wing of the Democrats may have taken over. And then someone like Michelle might not be able to win. But you know what? I can't make a strong prediction like that. I've shown this graph time and time again. Most of the party wants moderate policies. So maybe that's what they really do need. And look, obviously it's reflected in the strong polling of someone like Joe Biden. He's reminiscent of the Obama era, and he's more moderate. Here, I tweeted this out. All this stuff going on with Rashida Tlaib and Israel and Palestine is exactly what Trump needs and wants. Yep, they're playing his game. And it's like, I say this all the time. Time and time again, we see Trump pulling puppet strings. And you can make fun of him all day and night. That's fine. I certainly don't care, But I'll tell you this. Trump calls out the squad. He tweets about it. Israel bans them. Everyone says, wow, Trump, how could you? Trump wants them center stage. You know why? Because the more famous they get, the more this progressive side grows, the more the moderates and the conservatives feel they have no choice but to vote for him. I am not just saying that, the polls show it. More moderates believe the left is too far left than believe the right is too far right. That means advantage Trump. And while there are still people who are moderate and scared of Trump, more people are concerned about the left. So Trump says, you know what? Let's make the stories about the far left rise to the top. And he is pushing it out. He is calling them out. He is giving them the press. Trump got, $5 billion in free press in the 2016 cycle? He knows what the press wants. And they are eating up all the orange man bad stories and propping up the far left candidates that Americans don't like. So what happens? When you see Harry Reid saying these are bad ideas, When you see a guy actually saying he's considering voting for Trump than the far left policies, you see that Trump knows exactly what he's doing. More people on the Democrat side want moderate policy. So he makes sure everything we see is far left. I mean, I'll admit, it is big, right? They were getting big before Trump. I'm not acting like we're all stuck in Trump's chess game. No, Trump's just exploiting what already has been happening. It's basically a fire started, and you've got people like me, like spraying the hose, being like, admittedly, I do videos criticizing them, and it's probably the same thing. It probably still just gives them press and props them up, and it's, in the long run, probably bad, I guess. But Trump, he's standing there, fanning it, like, let it come. And I hear this from Trump supporters too, saying, good, let them meet themselves. Well, not good for me, and admittedly not good for the country, okay? We need a rational, reasonable debate. We need someone who's moderate, who's gonna be like, yeah, we need border security, but we do need healthcare too, so let's have a conversation, right? I think everybody would agree to that. Instead, what do we get? We get people trying to shut down events based around having a conversation with those we disagree with. If you don't get the reference, I made a video talking about this the other day. Our event is being, targeted by activists. So the moderates want to have a conversation, and the conservatives know it, and the conservatives are totally cool with it. And that's why it's really easy to say, hey, conservative, come have a conversation. But the far left is at war with us, the moderates. And so they want to tear us down. They can't let us talk. It's so weird how they call moderate Democrat types far right. It's insanity. But check out this one last segment I'm going to save to blow your mind. You know what? I think I'll do a full segment on this in the next segment at 6 p.m. Conservative media has grown under Trump. I wonder why that is. Well, I'll tell you why. Moderates are being shut out. And so they're increasingly rejecting the far left insane news outlets. At least that's my perspective. I have found myself just confused when I read some of these stories from like Newsweek. I'm like, what is this? This is not true. I made a video about it where Newsweek wrote a story about a fake quote from Ocasio-Cortez, which came from a tweet from the Daily Beast, which misconstrued a story from the Daily Beast. And all of that turned into a fake story, 4 sources. And I was like, why? This is nuts. So then I find myself looking for a healthier media diet. And this means more views for the conservative side. It absolutely does. I don't want to be fed nonsense. And so as someone who reads the news and fact checks, when I fact check these sources, the New York Times hiring far left people, I'm like, this is nuts. So yeah, it's not just me. There are a lot of people who voted for Obama who are now Trump supporters. There are a lot of people who voted for Bernie who are now Trump supporters. And the same is true for Occupy Wall Street. Do you think they're going to be reading The Verge or BuzzFeed? No, they voted for Trump. They don't want to hear you rag on the guy that they got behind. And now they're being called racist. They're going to give you the middle finger. Conservative media is going to grow. I'm going to save this for another segment coming up at some point after 6, but stick around. The next segment will be 6 p.m., youtube.com/TimCastNews. Thanks for hanging out. I'll wrap it up one more time, okay? A guy would rather have someone he views as a racist if it means not having far left policy. Now, I take it with a grain. I don't want to misconstrue what he's saying, but it seems like he really does believe the worst things about Trump. Maybe he doesn't really believe Trump's racist. He thinks they're messaging. No, actually, I'm sorry. He does. He says the list would speak for itself for what Trump has done, but he'd rather have that? Wow. I'll see you guys in the next segment.